feel your fire, baby, let me dance to your love. I wanna feel your fire burn, rising from the flames. Bell dies lonely to burn again. Let me dance in the rhythm of your flame. If I burn, let me die to burn again. If I burn, let me die to burn again.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Get Lit. I am Rebecca Hahn, and this is Blue Star Dear Woman. And today's show is about how completely extraordinarily average my child is and how I'm totally okay with that. So our show today, we're going to title it How to Sage Instead of Age. How saging instead of aging is something that takes a lifetime to acquire, but it's something we should be teaching our children to become wiser instead of smarter from the get-go. So you can call in through CCN, and that number is posted at the bottom, or you can go to dearwoman.com and get on our chat there, and you can write to us and we'll answer your questions that way. Last week we had a couple of calls in and a couple of chats, and it was really great and enriched our show and made it so much more fun. So I encourage everybody to be brave and chime in if you feel like it. So what is this thing that we're talking about, saging instead of aging? And
hold on one second, Becca.
Yes.
Because originally we posted this show as Clear Light, and we were going to pick up on your profound experience, and then the one I had recently, and we were going to bring that back to the innocence of children.
Yes. So Clear Light was something that Blue just named this week for this show, and it ties into this idea of getting clear enough, which ties into this idea of how we become wiser instead of smarter, and how we can entrain our children and guide them to be clear light vessels so that they can sage and become wiser instead of age and just become smarter. So I had, if you haven't tuned into our previous shows, there's sort of been this theme for going on 2 months now around clearing ourselves and practicing letting go for the ultimate conscious death. That's clean and clear and carrying our mind stream and our soul onto the next life with us in a conscious way. And I had this occurrence happen to me probably going on a month ago now, where I had this half-waking 40-second dream where, and I said in a previous show that it was this, I've had deep meditations and I've had profound experiences, and I've been downloaded by the divine and know it's not me being smart, but being wise. But I've had nothing ever like this before, where within 40 seconds, I bolted upright and had this complete cellular clearing of all of my crap that I just couldn't get deep enough to get into. And then I didn't think about it again, but everything changed around me, even without even consciously thinking about it. People even physically look different to me. And Blue and I have addressed this on the past couple of shows, and how it really profoundly changed me and my relationships to people, and how the work I've done led up to it, but how that alone was just something in evolution that I think a lot of people are experiencing. So Blue had contacted me earlier and said, I had that experience this week. I finally had that experience too, and I'd love to speak to it. And it is this clear light experience. And I've been really thinking about how we're programming our children to be overachievers, and how it's no longer acceptable to raise a good kid, but you have to raise a above average kid that pushes really hard, whether it's soccer or scholastics or piano or ballet. They have to be exceptional. And I came across a couple of things this week that I'll share with you later, but it really tied into Blue's experience and my experience of, you know, we have a combined 90 plus years between the two of us. And it took us, 90 years combined to get to a place where we're beginning to sage instead of age, where we have this cellular download and clearing. Mm-hmm. And why do we have to wait that many years? Our children should be doing that throughout their life. So I'm going to turn it over to Blue to share her experience, and I'll chime in with mine for the viewers that didn't get to see the past couple of weeks. And then we're going to loop it around to how we can actually change the way our children are raising their consciousness.
Mm.
as opposed to raising their materialism or things like that.
Absolutely. And that also, aloha to everyone, by the way.
Yes.
And that also, I had just finished the book Island by Aldous Huxley. And interestingly enough, it ends with facilitating an elderly person making her transition. And so once again, the dying process comes around, but the last, I think it's the second to last chapter, Huxley breaks down in this book all the aspects of raising your child to have that consciousness of the here and now. So I thought that was kind of interesting too, because a lot of what Rebecca and I do is we look for the synchronicities in our personal lives. We look for those magical symbols and moments. And then when we come together for Get Lit, that's what's lit in us. That's how we uncover our perspective of the day. But to go back to, okay, clear light. So Rebecca had spoken in the last show about the profound shift. And I had been contemplating what she had shared. And this past week, I had facilitated a cleansing ceremony. You may have seen it on Facebook. It was a hoot and a half. It was called Muck Up Healing. And basically what we did is we had to clean the muck of the bottom of a pond at the Fire Om Earth Sanctuary. And after looking at all these technological ways of how can we suck the mud, the silt out of the pond, a brilliant Native American elder said to Lorna, the owner of the sanctuary, buckets.
Right, exactly.
It was like, it was a no-brainer, but it was a real simple, ancient, indigenous, buckets will do it, go in the water. And so it was all about setting intention for the next 6 months, which was very much influenced by the solar eclipse 2 weekends ago and the fall equinox that just happened recently. So anyway, it was in my experience, no matter how light and filled with laughter, when I'm setting intention, shamanically, it has happened to me all my life, inevitably, the next 1 to 3 days, I go down. I have to, somehow I attract all that we're clearing, and I'm still working it. Even though the ceremony was about getting into this spring-fed pond, we got mucked up and we let it go. Then there was more letting go. And so the day after, I was sitting and I was dealing with all these negative programming, and I just kept breathing and praying and just saying, you know, this isn't mine, doesn't belong to anyone, release, allow. And I basically had to sit most of the day. By nightfall, I had just accepted with the understanding that whatever is okay, and that I know I'm just moving through this. I'm reading out.
Can I ask you a question real quick?
Yeah, sure.
So when you were saying all of this negativity was moving through you and then I just had to sit, can you give us a few examples for our listeners about like what inner dialogue was happening? Was it more of your inner, the youthful negativity, like I wasn't good enough for my parents, or was it more about the world? And then when you sat, what did you need to do to sit? What were you doing in your sitting to help?
Okay, because we really are essentially talking about how did I clean and clear?
Yeah, so what was the inner dialogue specifically, if you're willing to share?
Okay, well, it was just right after the ceremony, there were other individuals we made acquaintance with, and I felt this dark energy around one of these people. And I almost got obsessed with it. And I was like looking at myself going, am I judging this person? You know, and that being just kept being inside my consciousness, and I didn't understand why. So I had to get clear that there was no problem here, and I didn't have to create a story. but this person's essence was in my being and it was dark. Okay. So, it's kind of it's not quite the cut and dry negativity. I had a judgment and they were
Right. That's what I was asking.
Yeah, no. And when I say negativity, it's more that I'm feeling additional density in my body. I feel a little more weightiness. And I know that it's because I'm not clear and clean enough. It's not necessarily, a familiar negativity, like I had a judgment or I thought I didn't do a good job or something like that.
Because I asked because there's lots of different ways we manipulate ourselves to stay down, to stay in the denser areas. So I was curious what yours were at that moment.
And like I said, it was a pretty simple ceremony, but I mean, we raised the vortex of energy. Laughed. I mean, we laughed so much. We had, it was very joyful, yet I think, the prayer was not only were we clearing ourselves individually, but we were clearing the planet. And once again, that made me fill up more. And so I wasn't feeling like I was in that moment that I was as clear and as light as I was familiar with. I knew I had stuff, right? And it was affecting me physically. All right, it was making me dense and tired. Does that answer your question about that?
Yes. And so when you sat, what was your process?
So this is what happened that night. I'm reading Aldous Huxley, and we're in the dying part of the book. I'm reading the book, and I'm starting to experience there's a part of me that's moving, that there was a part of me clearing, and there was a part of me reading the book. All right. And I'm watching this and I'm still reading and I'm getting the story. I'm taking it in. And this other part's getting more and more spaciousness.
It was like when I had my waking dream, I knew there was part of me that was clearing and part of me that was just couldn't help being in the dream.
Exactly. Okay. So now, whatever other aspect of my multidimensional self comes in, another observing part goes, you're clearing, Blue Star. And I closed the book very, very simply. And I went, oh my gosh, I'm clear light. I'm clear light. Now, what happened was I was just like, this is really magnificent. But I went to sleep that night. I got up the next morning and the first thoughts that came to me was clear light. And I'm sitting, the whole day unfolded magically. But I started thinking about you, Becca, and I thought everything profoundly changed. I had it. Yeah, it was just a major shift. Yet there was this awareness, this presence. Wasn't thinking, wasn't directing any images inside.
Everything from now on has changed. And one of the major differences, which I think you just spoke to, is I didn't try and figure out what had changed or what wasn't, or I wasn't looking for what was different. It just was.
It just was. And so I wanted to, and then this is the part that ties it into why we're going to talk about children. I'm sitting there and it was like, there was no analyzing or anything. But all of a sudden I had an image of myself when I was maybe about 7 years of age. And I had this overflowing feeling of innocence as a child. And I thought, I felt innocent. I wasn't thinking about anything. I just felt vulnerable in a strong way. And my whole day, I named Clear Light. And so when you came on, we chatted before the show and you spoke about, let's talk about children. Let's talk about, the overachiever versus the average child and the heart. It circled back to what I was reading in Huxley. Okay. So I wanted to just update with that experience. And that I think, and you had said several times last week, you know, you are offering messages of hope. And I think that's what I want to elaborate again, is that I wasn't thinking, how am I going to heal myself? I wasn't analyzing myself.
No.
Absolutely just saying, I'm going to be okay with what is, and I'm going to trust, once again, source uninterrupted. And without anything we did, like what you said, Becky, you snoozed and then you woke up and you were profoundly changed. I think that's what I want to share once again, that when I started to feel that spaciousness, it just happened. All right? I wasn't conjuring any particular intention, visualization. I was doing, and it just happened, and I could feel the spaciousness and the observer just going, wow.
Mazel tov, you've had your spiritual bat mitzvah, finally. 90 years combined, but we did it.
Mazel tov.
Mazel tov.
Remember, it's not a one-time thing.
No.
Okay? It's forever. But anyway, just to share those encouraging words.
Yeah, Blue calls it the clear light. I call it cracking the nut. But that's, I finally cracked the nut that was just so, like, I couldn't get in there with all the work that I did. But yeah, so, you know, all I know is that all week I'm aware of, and I'm usually like this anyway, but probably a bit more so since we've been broadcasting, what are the themes that I'm noticing? Mm-hmm. And what am I cogitating over, and what am I putting my attention towards? And I did not know that Blue had this transition and clearing until today. But all I know is that I started having a really huge part of myself that was feeling emotional and passionate and kind of like, about the way we're raising our children, specifically regarding this idea of overachieving, and not just academically, but just culturally. And I don't think it's just Americans. I think it's a lot of first worlders. And so I was noticing that. And then when you told me about your cellular transition, I was like, yes, this is where we need to get children to much sooner. And part of the theme that was occurring for me was I ran across a couple of things randomly, and I was like, this is so speaking to exactly what I'm experiencing through my daughter or through what I'm seeing in other children. And some of it comes on the heels of her being in a new school, and fourth grade, the academic push is like exponential compared to first through third. And she just did a big project, you know, that project we all did on the solar system, right? Where you build your little planets and you line them up in your little poster board, or you do it in a little, she wanted to do, cut the box out and put them in the box. And so we were driving home one day, and I said to my partner, you realize she's not going to learn a goddamn thing about planets, but she's going to learn to problem solve and be creative and blend color and manipulate things, like, you know, how to build a planet from nothing. And I purposely said to her, we're not buying anything for this project. You got to figure it out, and I'll help you. And so at the end I said, so do you feel like you know more about planets yet? She goes, no. I said, but you had fun doing the project. And 2 nights, 4 hours in a row, both nights. It was a lot of work, and it was fabulous. And so it's this idea of, you know, I could have posted it on Facebook and been like, look how exceptional my kid is. She did this thing, or, you know, she won the spelling bee, or, you know, but what I want to post is this thing that says, you know what? My kid just reads just above average, and she totally sucks at math. And she's not playing soccer because she doesn't like competitive sports, and she barely practices the piano, but she's fairly good at it. And you know what? I don't give a shit. Guess what? She's the first one on the playground to welcome a new kid. She is the first one when someone falls down and skins her knee to get the Band-Aid. She is the first one to say, please, thank you, hello, goodbye, and may I. Yeah. And she's cultivating this place in herself where she's intuitive and sensitive. Right. But she's also a total lunatic at times. You know, I'm not going to say she's like that all the time. She's a complex unfaulted, brilliant human being. She's what we should be expecting out of all our children. She's exceptionally average.
Well, hey, you're getting a big bravo on the chat room. I wanted to catch up with you.
Okay.
Not only do we have our regular Tracy, we have her husband, Jerry.
Hi, Jerry.
And Jerry's going, bravo, Rebecca. And Tracy's going, yay. And just to go backwards a little bit, okay, in the chat room, Tracy had shared, so awesome, had a similar experience this week where clarity and awareness rushed into me, and I can even describe the ease of it. The whole world felt completely new to me.
Yes.
I just wanted you to know you've got our Jerry and Tracy really jazzed here. Jerry just said, so much more important skills than math. Hello. Yeah. All right. Oh, I love you two being on the chat room. Thank you.
So let me read this thing to you guys if I can see it. But okay. Thomas K. Beck posted this right when I was getting in my big thing about I want my kid to be exceptionally average. And it's Mary Oliver, the poet, which I found out later, but it's called Make the Ordinary Come Alive. Do not ask your children to strive for extraordinary lives. Such striving may seem admirable. I can barely see this, so that's why I'm stuttering a little bit. But it is a way of foolishness. Help them instead to find the wonder and the marvel of an ordinary life. Show them the joy of tasting tomatoes, apples, and pears. Show them how to cry when pets and people die. Show them the infinite pleasure in the touch of a hand. And make the ordinary come alive for them. The extraordinary will take care of itself.
Nice.
And I'm so glad he posted that because that's exactly that piece I was searching for. It's like, I want to teach my child that it's okay to be complex and full of humanity. Mm-hmm. And you don't have to be a soccer star to be worthy, or you don't have to get straight A's. Although if she got straight A's, that'd be great. But I'm saying I'm not going to qualify her by that piece.
Right. And so, I want to circle this around because when we were talking, a couple of shows back, one of the places that we were going is how do we nurture and cultivate the virtues of the heart?
Yes.
Not only in ourselves, but in our children. I mean, of course, we're the models for them. But that's what we're coming back to. It's like, what are the values that are really important in being human?
Yes.
Just being human.
And I find myself also, because I've watched myself over the years with her, where, you give birth to a child and you think, please God, make this child an exponentially better version of myself. Smarter, funnier, more equipped. Like, I want this child to be a better me.
Yeah.
And then they're not. They're better in a lot of ways, but they struggle in different ways than you did, or they're better in some ways. Mm-hmm. And I catch myself sometimes getting angry with her for not being better at math, not working harder on her math. Or I find myself getting angry inside and keeping to myself that she's not on a 10th grade something level. She's above average in most stuff by a grade level. Big deal, whatever. But I find myself being like, I wish she could just excel ridiculously at something where they go, oh, that girl, that Rebecca's daughter, well, she's blah, blah, blah. And part of my anger is at wanting to protect. I get angry at the world. I get angry at her for not doing better because I want her life to be so easy. And if she's exceptional naturally at everything, it will be easier for her. And sometimes I just find myself getting angry, maybe at my own genetics. I don't know. And I'm exceptional too. We're all exceptional in our own ways. But
when I'm hearing,
I find moments of anger in myself where I want to. It's an anger where I'm like, do better so that you could have an easier time in life. And I'm like, but that is an old paradigm. Like that better is bullshit. It's going to destroy you.
This is what I'm hearing as we're talking. All the self-love exercises we've talked about. How do we come back to our center, the Buddha mind, whatever you want to call it, okay? We're working backwards.
Yeah.
A child is born in innocence, born from clear light. All right. And we're wanting to go backwards in the sense that we're wanting to remember our innocence as a child. And somewhere in between, what we're wanting to teach our children or re-nourish is how do you live behind the veil and still have your earthly experience in the world as it is. And you can witness in children when they're starting to slip out of living behind the veil. All right. When all of a sudden they're not talking to their imaginary friends anymore. They're not as spontaneous in their creativity or those unique, profound messages that just slip out. And yet we really are in wanting to teach our children. We're remembering behind the veils, and we're trying to like kind of hold them up a little bit. Like, don't lose that. Don't lose that so quick.
Blue, do you remember the show we did where most of what we talked about, I just lost you guys there. Most of what we talked about on the show is about how we're born with 80% soul and 20% human.
Yeah.
Remember? And that as we develop, we have to learn how to be human because we don't have that moral compass. Right. So we're taught morality and humanity in these very concretized ways, but we're born with this big, beaming, pure, huge soul.
Yeah.
And then we get really human and dense. And then by the end of life, we're trying to reach back towards that pure soul again. And I'm thinking, and we talked on the show about how we can create that balance where it doesn't go like, soul, human, then you die. It should be soul, and human is always just a little bit less. Our soul, the clear light of our soul should be what's shining.
Yeah, and I think it is, I had spoken about this maybe 2 shows ago. The awareness I had recently is I kept, for years now, I kept thinking you had to have this spiritual understanding to be what's called awakened, right?
Right.
And I realized, oh my gosh, that's not true anymore. Not with the way science and physics and everything is meeting our spiritual selves. It's knowledge, just simple knowledge of 3D, simple knowledge of what's really going on the planet, which is addressed by just about every program on CCN, okay? That the knowledge is what's waking us up. It's not that you have to be any spiritual enlightenment. The knowledge enlightens you, okay? And it's like what we're talking about. When you have the knowledge of why you're only 20% this and 80% that, okay? We change the percentage, and that's that familiar cliche. It's like knowledge is power. So when you ask the question, it's like, hey, how did the political polls go in that direction when I know for a fact this candidate over here had 80% of the vote, okay?
Yeah.
When you go behind that story and you find out what's really going on, we become more enlightened. We have more space to be our divine spiritual beings in the human vessel.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that knowledge too is helping our children. It's like we're not spoon-feeding our children the lies, the deceptions that our parents really believed were true. See, they fed us the deceptions because they believed in it. And now that's also helping to model for the children what's more authentic.
Well, a lot of us aren't spoon feeding our children that stuff, but so many people still are. And I know that we've been sending out a message of hope, and I still am with that message of hope because these children are being born despite their parents' buy-in to the deception. These children, the indigo children are being born, and these kids are being born, and parents are going, what the heck do I do with this kid? They're 20 times more intuitive than, they don't even know that word. They don't even know that that's what they're naming it, but they're seeing an intuitive, exceptional indigo child. Mm-hmm. And they're just like, okay, well, all right. And that's what I mean by this idea of exceptional, the paradigm of exceptional has to change too, and we have to stop putting things on social media or talking in a language to other parents and people that, oh, my kid did this and my kid did that, and oh, they just ran the track meet and they won, or they got all A's, or I swear to God, like if I see one more fucking post about I brought this amazing child into this world 8 years ago today, and I'm like, dude, get off of fucking Facebook and go spend time on the birthday with the kid instead of posting all over Facebook. Like, who has time for that shit if you're spending it with your kid, you know? And stop posting all this shit about how amazing your child is because they run fast in track, or they're on a 9th grade algebra level when they're like in 1st grade. It's like, go walk in the woods with your kid. And at the same time, I find myself getting angry or frustrated because I want her to be that kid too, because society hasn't quite shifted yet. Mm-hmm. And I want her to just have less struggle because I want her to be seen by society the way it is now. And so I have to really watch myself in that way. But I'm like, yeah, I'm just so blah about Facebook right now and kids and posting all their, I'm like, just go spend time with your kid. Quit snapping selfies with them and then taking 20 minutes to post it on Facebook. Sorry, I'm on a roll. But that's what my week has felt like inside of me around raising our children.
Tracy's sharing something here in the chat room.
Okay.
It's been an ongoing effort for us to keep that pureness shining. Homeschooling her has given us more leeway to take the focus off of grades and place them more on what is way more valuable. She has the space to explore much more. She now talks regularly about what she's choosing to manifest. Laugh out loud. Math, no, not so much. And that's one kid is probably busy. That's one's kid is probably busy on Facebook as well. Sad. I don't know if I read that right.
Yeah, the kid and the parent are both on Facebook, I think is what she's saying. Yeah.
So, okay. So again, I'd like to work this crystal rainbow bridge of what we as adults are trying to reclaim and remember for ourselves, and what we actually perceive in these very beautiful, innocent children who are so quick to love, are so quick to have compassion, so quick to care about the animals, their friends. And what I think we're closing in on, the muck of the world. We're both, from the adult responsibility of really wanting to nurture the beauty of the heart, which is really essentially what we're saying, and eliminate all those things in the 3D reality that hurt us as adults, and we don't want to have our children subjected to. I feel like we're closing in like that, right? Just coming into the pure heart, and that the gap is getting smaller, that we're really, we're starting to say, you know what? It's more important that my kid is smiling, that she or he is happy, and that and they're willing to tell the truth, and they're not afraid to tell the truth. These values, like one of the things that we had talked about was how do we educate? How can we think about education? And it's really us. Forget the schools right now. It's you as a parent. It's me as a co-parent. It's our community that cares about children. Mm-hmm. It's like, come on. If we're loving the animals, the children are loving the animals. So back to the mother.
Yeah,
Tracy says she now talks regularly about, I agree, Blue. I do believe that more and more people are realizing they just want to be happy and screw the systems that don't work.
Yeah, and the systems are in such a state right now, and there is a huge trend in homeschooling, and I wasn't able to do it because I was a single mom and I was working, but I had set up a whole protocol, and then we wound up actually not doing it. But I've got Lily in this exceptional Montessori charter school right now, and I'm still really struggling. And the city that I live in actually has, if you go through the public school systems in this small city, they will pay for anywhere in the state, whether private or public or land grant school, they'll pay for your college. It's this big push. It's in this endowment that happened, and it's going to go on forever. And I'm like, ooh, that's so enticing. But I have a sense that I'm probably not going to leave her in public school the whole time, because there's this sense of creativity and resourcefulness and just a sense of peace and richness in herself, a clear light, that when she gets out of school at the end of the beginning of the summer, it takes about a month and a half to get her to a place where she's her age developmentally again, instead of acting over her age or under her age. And to be able to sit and chop up worms for 3 hours in the yard, it takes her that long to slow down. And then I have to put her back into school.
Okay, and let me just interject quickly and you continue. That's just like how many adults, when you go on vacation, how long does it take to finally find yourself?
Yeah. So, and I mean, my coaching and consulting practice, one of the main veins of it is coaching teachers how to have a creative, problem-solving, constructivist classroom. So I'm not giving up hope on the educational model. I want to help them, but it's going to take a while. And I don't know if I can sit my daughter through that. But
Then let's go back to our profound experience. What is an option to happen here is the clear light can move in, and it can be profound change without just what happened to you and I.
Yeah.
That a change could happen that we didn't analyze and assert. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah. Well, and I remember when she was younger, that idea of, and I've said this on other shows, that the pineal, however you want to pronounce it, starts to calcify around age 8 or 9. And it's very evident in her as well, where they lose that. She would say stuff and conceptualize deep spiritual practices in ways where, and we had a conversation when she was 4 or 5 about being in complete control of your own destiny, that you can manifest anything that you want. And she was like, so I can do anything I want in life if I just set my intention and I manifest it. I'm like, yeah, anything. And so that was a concept for her back then. And now she's more concerned about who's doing what in school. And but then when I keep her out of that model, she tends to go back towards this more pineal-focused, intuitive, creative self. And all the research is pointing towards what they're calling a 21st century human, is what they're calling it, 21st century learner, where everything about how we learn has changed. It's gone from the industrial model to a model of needing to be higher order thinkers, problem solvers, culturally sensitive, intuitive, quick thinking outside the box, inventive. And so I'm like, well, what a better way to do that than to take her traveling, or say, go out in the yard and get 10 things for the day to build this thing, and your math will come, your brain will change. When it means something to you, you'll get it, And yet I send her back to school and they're like, but she needs to drill her math. And she comes home and I'm like, don't stress about it. Your brain will develop that eventually when it's ready, or it has some meaning for you, because she is the type of person that she applies meaning to things. She's not good doing a memorization just to do it. She's like, what's the point? I want to apply it to something. So I constantly battle that idea of, wanting to homeschool her, not being quite ready to yet, setting this paradigm of you can manifest anything you want, and you can breathe through life and create space, and who cares about the math right now, but also work hard at the things you want to work hard at in a creative way. And then she goes back to school and it's like, okay, and then she comes home and I fight the battle again. So I'm left wanting to still be with the cause and help, but also really protect my kid from it.
Okay, so Tracy in the chat room, and I want to remind people about that chat room in a second. Laugh Out Loud had that same conversation with my daughter early on, Becca, and she took it seriously, Laugh Out Loud. She's manifesting animals now. A little leery of her love for dinosaurs. Grins.
Yes.
To our
with
listeners, I just want to share before you respond that we have a chat room now available during the Get Lit show. If you go to dearwoman.com and click on Watch Live and then scroll down below the CCN ad, you'll find the chat room. You can enter through your Facebook username. And that's Dear Woman is spelled, I think it's up on the screen how you spell Dear Woman. And also we're a call-in show. Those numbers are occasionally flashed on the screen. You can always call in and join the conversation. Okay, go ahead, Becky. You wanted to respond.
So I think our viewers will appreciate the story. So when my daughter was 5, I fell asleep in her little twin bed with her. I still do actually sometimes. And I was in there all night with her, completely passed out. And I feel like it was still dark outside. It was like 5:30 in the morning. I think you already know the story, Blue. And I feel this thing on my head. Mama, get up. I got a question for you. And I was like, are you kidding me? And I was like thinking she was going to ask if she could have a banana or something. And she was like, what's all this heaven and hell stuff? And I go, it's 6 o'clock in the morning. She goes, yeah, but I want to know what this heaven and hell stuff is. And is it real? And I said, and thank God I'm a quick thinker, but I was like, well, they're not real. It's something in your energy. Like hell is considered, she's like, why is it underground? I said, well, because it's dark and it's mucky and it's thick and you can't escape it. And heaven is something in yourself that's light and airy and full of peace and love. And I said, but it's your own, what you make up. You make up your own hell and you make up your own heaven. Hell is dark, heaven is light and love, and hell is dark and dense. And she said, so it doesn't really exist? I said, only if you decide they exist in the way you choose to live your life. I said, you can live your life in light and love, or you can live your life in darkness and being negative. She goes, so I have a choice? I don't get forced into these places. They're not like where the devil lives. I said, no, that's your own thinking. We had this really long conversation about it. Yeah. I said, you can, and that's what led to the manifestation conversation. I said, you can manifest anything you want. You can manifest a negative, horrible life where you hate everything, or you can manifest a life of love and light and peace and joy. It's all based on how you choose to live.
Nice.
You mean I can do anything I want? I can choose to have any sort of life I want? And I said, yes. And so she goes, well, I'm choosing to manifest myself, and you're going to marry him. So this is like 6:30 in the morning. I go, okay, that's great. Let's do it. And so she got up and she got a piece of paper, and I said, draw what you want, and I will write whatever you want out. And so she drew a picture of like all these wedding chairs, and of course she's 5, and me and some guy, like she's like, and he's got blue eyes and dark hair, and he's tall, and he's got this and that, and she like drew him perfectly, and then me, and of course her in the middle of us, like walking down the aisle, and drew our clothes and described everything, described his personality, and towards the end of it, and then we took it and we wrapped it up with a red ribbon and stuck it in her windowsill because it happened to be a full moon with a crystal next to it. And I said, it'll send it out to the universe. She goes, I am so excited. I am shimmering. And she goes, and then she goes, this is so great, Mom. She goes, I am so excited about this. I think I gotta poo. It makes me want to poo. I'm so excited. And I was like, fabulous.
Oh, this is great. Well,
yeah.
As you're telling that story too, I remembered that one of the things that I use for my own self-healing is I acknowledge there's a child of consciousness within me. And and every time I just kind of get a moment of pausing and get a little a little bewildered, I go, okay, there's a child of consciousness sitting on my lap, and it's me. And what would I tell her right now, or him? And it would be things like that. It's like, well, the first thing I'd want to do is remind you that all those things that you see outside that don't feel like they're of love, they're made up. And so you don't have to take that too seriously, but you want to have the wherewithal that, there is this other timeline. But your timeline is you can relax. And if you just relax and let the mother flow through you, everything you wish for from your heart will reveal itself.
Yeah.
And I'm starting to think about this more and more, that if we ever wonder, what should we be telling our children? Well, stop for a moment. If you're raising your own child of consciousness now. That's what we're doing. We're reinvigorating our innocence.
Mhm.
And so if I come back to me and I go, well, what do I tell myself? There's where all the heart virtues come back in. I'd say, hey, it's okay. I can love myself for who I am. And geez, maybe I'm not like that overachiever, but in fact, that's not real. The overachievers aren't real. Comparing ourselves to anyone else is not real. In fact, being unique and being pure and being clearly who we are, that's the prize. That's the real prize.
Yeah.
And I find too, when you talk to yourself as a child, our voices get softer. We
Mhm.
use simpler language. It's not all complicated and scientific. It's really simple, heart to heart. It's like, yeah, if that doesn't jive with you, then you don't have to participate in that.
Mhm.
And so there again, I feel like, we're making the gap smaller because coming back to our own remembrance of, my gosh, when we're children, we're not thinking about, should I go here? I'll have all the benefits of that, or should I decide to do this? Or I'll be more efficient, or should I do that? I'll get some points for being an overachiever. Innocence and childlike just allows the impulses in our body and our mind and our spirits to just move, and it's like if all of a sudden you see a gorgeous butterfly, you're following the butterfly, and you're not concerned about the sandcastle you just were making and you left it. You don't even think about it. So I think that innocence is what's lightening our load in so many ways.
Yeah. Yeah, and I know I'm on a rant this show, but I also still want to send that message of hope.
Yeah, I'm trying to do science.
That evolution is what's helping us, despite those parents that haven't caught on yet, or despite me and my needing to get the clear light at 40-something years old, almost 50, that our kids are coming in with a different set of DNA. Thank God, to help them be clear and full of light younger. But we still have to nurture that.
Mm-hmm. Well, I always love going back to, yes, we have to practice discernment. We have to really understand what's going on in our cells and our environment. But I think that the greatest nurturance, we called it creativity all along, but I think now it's really important to use words like source and the mother and the greater universe and all that is, that it's always here. Now, how do you allow and relax enough to let the grace and the beauty and the nourishment of the mother to just flow through us?
Yeah.
That's the missing ingredient. You see, and understandably, in a planet and culture that has been driven by greed and power, has set the tone, the propaganda, the messages to create a being that doesn't think about their God, goddess self. And that's the missing gold nugget. Is that's got to be a significant piece. You know, there's me, myself, and God Goddess. and Source has got to have a seat at the table. And that's what we're doing. And all we're doing is acknowledging that there are invisible, subtle energies that are absolutely flowing through us, and our individuated consciousness exists in it. And by golly, we're not supposed to be like anyone else.
No.
We are absolutely not supposed to be like anyone else. So there's never a moment to look outside and compare ourselves to anyone. And that's a big remembrance, a big integral part of our being. And I think, we're slowly nurturing that as well. And then, okay, it comes back to Huxley again, because in Brave New World Revisited that we spoke about, is that Huxley's saying that this is where we want to teach one another exactly the content of propaganda and its purpose.
Mm-hmm.
And that Huxley says there are times that irrational propaganda can actually be a necessary tool if it's done with knowledge and honors people's free will choice.
Yeah.
That it really can influence the organization of a society, but not to the extent that any one person has too much power and it becomes a dictatorship.
Yeah.
And I'm just bringing it back to that part of, we need to educate ourselves and our children that propaganda exists and it can serve as long as it's not deceptive and it's transparent. All right. And that whole understanding of suggestibility, that, remember, children are extremely suggestible, but so have we been.
Mm-hmm.
And we're identifying now that there's a lot of suggestions on our planet we don't want any longer, but we use suggestibility on ourselves if we're cultivating heart center, heart virtues, higher consciousness. We're making a decision to suggest
Mm-hmm.
that influence. So I think talking about and breaking down how education works and how we're re-educating ourselves is really significant.
Yeah, and I think, Huxley, my interpretation of Huxley's take on propaganda was that we need it keeps us agile. We exercise that muscle of discernment, because if we had none and then all of a sudden something was thrown on the plate, we probably would just believe it like everything else. But so my interpretation is that propaganda is there for us to exercise our muscles of discernment, as long as it's not in the big picture hurting anybody, that kind of thing. But it's good. It's something we need.
Yeah, and I think we're just getting to the crest of recognizing how propaganda created so many sheeples, created so many, dumbing down herds of us. And I think we're just starting to recognize what the fuck influenced us staying so dumbed down and so damn asleep.
And I think,
and so now that we're waking up, we have to recognize these were very powerful strategic tools. And imagine in the hands of those of us who enhanced a tone of equality for everything, all our relations, omnitaquiescent, could be used in a very beneficial way.
Yeah, and I think where people have stayed so dumbed down, and if we're looking at the education model, they start this at a young age through our education model where, it's this perfect cocktail, the dumbed down cocktail of, one part's propaganda, two parts propaganda, one part exhaustion or depletion, just enough to keep you pushing and staying high functioning and producing, but so depleted that you don't have that extra resource and reservoir in place to be discerning. So 2 parts propaganda, 1 part exhaustion, and 2 parts like really base ritual. And what I mean by that is doing so many things repeated that nobody has to think outside the box. Like you start them at a really young age, like, you know, we're going to do every day this thing, you know, learn our math this way or learn our reading this way. And every day for the first 8 years of school, we're going to do it this way. And so you create this need for repetition and not thinking outside the box. And that cocktail is what leads to people being the masses, because then you ask them to be discerning and think outside the box when crisis hits or the world changes and they're going, what? I don't know how to do that.
That's called, Huxley refers to it as critical thinking. And I think that's a good term to keep.
But it's more than critical thinking. It's actually much more than critical thinking.
Of course it is.
Component.
Re-educating ourselves to be critical thinkers is reminding ourselves to ask questions. Find out why. Why is that a rule? Why is that a law? And then we're teaching children like how to problem solve, you know, on all our levels.
What winds up happening though is then you get to be an adult and you ask somebody who's an adult in a political conversation, well, why is that law important and what is that? And they'll recite something that makes sense to them as opposed to really thinking for themselves. And, you know, with my college students, I'll ask them why about something, you know, why developmentally do you think this happens? And nobody will answer me. And I'll say, you know what, you guys, I just want to hear your thinking. I don't care if it's right or wrong. And I create this really safe environment and they still can't answer. And I said, you guys aren't necessarily afraid to answer me and be right or wrong. You really have no idea how to even intelligently guess, which is critical thinking about this. It's pretty simple. Think outside the box. But it starts at a really young age. And one of the things as a consultant and coach that I work with, you know, when I work with teachers in classrooms is really strong reflective questions. No right or wrong questions. I said, I don't care what your answer is. I care how you got it. Tell me your thinking.
Right.
So it gets that brain exercising in terms of tracking their own thinking so that they can attach one thought to the next and create a problem, a solution to a problem.
And bring source right beside you, okay? And that's the missing thing. It's like, okay, first you start to think. You start to figure out how do you discern if something's true or false based on fact. But then there's the intuitive part, the God goddess in us that has another source of information that fills in all the empty spaces between thought and word and symbols. And that's the one, you know, I'm thinking a lot. Here I am at the Artist Colony once again, okay? And that's where the live broadcast is coming from. And we're a collection of artists and healers. And in a lot of ways, you know, I mean, you grew up in this town, you know it as well as I do, that we have more artists and healers than anything in this community. And in some way, we have lots of categories. We have artists who have defected to becoming an artist because the options in the world were so stifling, all right? But yet, within our artist community, we have the next kind of stifled artist. We have those who are trying to make a living from their art and create these commercial saleable, and that does not include the masterpieces. Masterpieces are not what's being enhanced in the culture of art because that's a specialized group. Yet that's the kernel in all of us artists that is wanting to be more than what we're witnessing and seeing and create the masterpiece as the masters that we are. And so we have in the artist community, I think we're prompted a little bit more to really embellish and understand that discernment, that critical thinking, that creative goddess spark where the original creation comes from. And then right there, don't compare it to anyone else. Don't even try to figure out, is it saleable? Because as soon as we go there, we're entering that 3D reality that wants to put a limit on the masterpiece, on the master creations of ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
And so therefore, there's no market for the brilliant and the genius.
Because we all are.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
And we all yearn to be that brilliant. And that brilliance comes from innocence, and it comes from critical thinking, discernment, and creator that fills in the spaces. Because the discerning part might go, okay, I know this doesn't work in this reality, in that timeline, okay, but I know this works in that timeline. And then we have the creative ingenuity that starts to move through, but then it's the creator that says, this doesn't have to make any sense at all. This does not have to fit in the box. And those are the most brilliant moments. When we splash that paint on the canvas, we don't give a flying fuck whether it's going to sell or not. And the masterpiece arrives. Well, that's our lives. You know, our master selves are present when we allow all of those integral parts to do the alchemical mix, you know, to do the magic. And that's how I would say these days are right now. I know I'm going off on a rant here too, but I feel like the day that the clear light moved through me was a magical day, and everything flowed. The synchronicity was there. The celebration was there all day long. But I reminded myself, samsara and nirvana are one, that, you know, at any given moment, it could change light and, you know, day and night, and they're both okay. The thread is being okay with what is. But I think planetarily, we are being assisted in more and more magic, and that we are evolving in our consciousness and in our heart.
Back up a second. You said monetarily we're being assisted.
No.
What did you say?
Not monetarily. Maybe
See, I do listen. I'm listening very closely.
I don't know what word I use, but it would be something like momentarily.
Momentarily. That makes more sense.
That we're being assisted energetic as multidimensional beings, and there is an evolutionary consciousness that is supporting us, that there is more support. And, you know, however we want to believe our creation story goes.
Yeah.
Let me see, there's some things in the chat room I've missed. Have to keep up with the chat room. Man, it's only 2 people and I'm having a tough time here. Let's see. Yeah, that cocktail, okay, goes back to your cocktail, is like setting the kids on autopilot, completely unawake in the moment.
Yeah.
plus a hefty dose of fear along with all of that. Easier to quote an authority on the subject than to voice their own opinion or even think, capitalized, about have an opinion, right? And so we have all these multiple layers that come up to be clear and cleansed, just in being genuine and authentic. What's going on in your Chicago?
Yeah, I want to read you guys a little bit of something from the Palo Alto School District. This was written by a girl who went through the schools in Palo Alto, California, and it's titled The Sorrows of a Young Palo Altan, and she's a former high school student, but I'll read snippets of it. But as a junior at Palo Alto High School and as a student who has been through the entire system, I feel qualified to speak about the problems. My stress began in elementary school, where the students were segregated into separate class meetings as early and late readers. Although we were just elementary schoolers, we perceived this as a differentiation between the less and more advanced students and either felt superior or shamed for the lack of. Middle school didn't get any better. At the end of 6th grade, we were placed into either pre-algebra or pre-algebra advanced. We labeled it the dumb, math lane, or the advanced. How could I possibly feel intelligent when the class I was in was considered dumb? That brings us to high school. I consider myself a prime example of the system. When I entered high school, I was interested in learning. I wanted to use my education to achieve goals and help problem solve in the world. A month or two into my freshman year, I felt the pressure building. It crushes you inside to see what appears to be the majority of your classmates acing tests while you're just doing all right, i.e. exceptionally average. People were taking summer immersion programs to skip ahead into AP French. They were in competitive sports, the insanity related to admissions. You learn that it's okay and necessary to have great apprehension regarding your grades. You focus on straight A's. You go to bed at 1 and you wake up early. You get about 3 or 4 hours of sleep a night. Now I'm skipping through. And that's if you don't have sports to do. I'm sick and tired of seeing my classmates struggle with challenges of being teenagers. I feel nothing less than despair and empathy when I hear of another student who is suicidal or depressed.
Mm-hmm.
Telling us to see a school counselor is for stress is insufficient. It's analogous to putting a Band-Aid over a fresh gunshot wound. That's how big their stress is.
Wow, that's serious.
Students are gasping for air, lacking the time to draw a measly breath. We are the product of a generation that so desperately wants us to succeed, but does not understand our needs.
And there you have it. Our youth.
Hold on one second. Listen to this. We are lifeless bodies in a system that breeds competition, hatred, and discourages teamwork and genuine learning. We lack sincere passion. We are sick.
Right on. That's exactly what we've been born into. We were raised
Yes,
to be sick.
that's the cocktail.
You know, we're the sick fucks, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we are. We're losing a lot of our youth to those little prison systems. But, you know, that's what's breaking down, and that's where we as adults can start to embrace and have a lot more compassion and understanding of our youth. Something I've come to the conclusion of over the past 20 years is I feel in this day and age, with conscious parents, they should be providing for their kids and keeping them home till age 30. And I really believe that.
Well, not like at home, never leaving the house, but living at home with you till 30.
To support that child until they're at least 30, so that they really have a wherewithal of the challenges of what's going on the planet, and get educated on how to stay true to themselves and then take the walk of life.
I think you need to clarify that statement a little bit, because it's funny that you say that, because when I was on this whole, my kid's exceptionally average and God love her, you know, she'll be an exceptionally average president of the United States. But I was thinking, and if she wants to live at home till 25, that's fine by me. I don't care what anybody else thinks. And then I had to track that thought a little bit, because, again, society's idea of what that means, I had to clear to get to the nut of what I actually meant for myself with that statement. If she wants to stay home till she's 25, that's fine by me. And I had to get away from the idea of, no, I'm supporting her. She's afraid to go out in the world. She's not doing anything with it. To this idea of, and that's why I'm clarifying for you, and you can fix me if I'm wrong, but
no,
the idea of community and family connection and working together. And so she wants to be connected to me and the family, and she likes the family. So that's great. It's not about like afraid to go out in the world and I'm supporting her. It's that
No,
connection is really important.
Right. I'm not talking about enhancing a
Right.
dependency.
Right.
I'm saying enhance the comfort and strength of that environment.
Exactly.
Support them until they're ready to go. See,
Right.
we were brought up in a generation where it's like, you know, get them going as quickly as possible. You got to get a job. You got to get an education. And that's bullshit. That's bullshit. And our kids know that now. And so I'm saying it's like, man, help those kids out until they say, okay, I got it. I understand what's going on out there. I think I can make a difference and I'm going to do it this way. Thanks for feeding me and thanks for giving me a place to rest.
Right. And I think jobs and education are super important, but how we how we help our children view what a job and an education is what's important. Yeah. And education can be taking 2 years and traveling the Amazon River if that's what you want to do. A job can be marketing something that you invented to see what happens with it.
Absolutely.
You know,
yeah,
a job is working towards something and problem solving.
Right.
So it could be anything.
Well, and I think that's the challenge right now is that, and in some sense, it's a beautiful challenge. It's like our youth have to be, well, we do too. We have to be so much more creative and innovative in how we're going to survive as in an economy and income. But at the same time, we know now it's got to be significant contribution to the betterment of the world and all of us together.
Well, it's like that student said who wrote that piece. All I wanted to do was learn. I was excited about learning so I could help solve the world's problems. And now I'm this empty vessel, this Robotron, totally depleted. Right.
And that's what it does. I mean, school, distracted, dumbed down enough. And then we have to figure out how we get out here. Like, gosh, how do I regain my freedom? What the fuck is freedom? You know, and where's my creative spark? I mean, am I a creative person? It's like, of course you are. Everyone is. And so that's what I love.
Keep talking. I'm going to go check on the kid.
Okay.
I'll be right back.
But, you know, in my own journey, you know, and of course I've had my amount of years on the planet. And so many times I went for my dream trying to make it work in that timeline out there. And I had to crash and die over and over and over. Yet there was that spark inside that said, you know, I mean, first the spark is like, fuck it, I'm going to make it. And then it's like, no, it's more like, fuck it. I can do this. I'll figure this out. And I think one of the, you know, at this point in my life, it became really important to stay simple. In fact, this is kind of how I would sum it up. I would say the most important thing to me in my life right now is my freedom. And I'm willing to live very modestly, to live very simply, just to have my freedom. And the most important thing on my list as far as what does freedom mean to me is having the time and space to find out who I am over and over and over. Find out who I am spiritually and to understand and cultivate that we are not alone. I am not alone. There is a greater source of energy that is uplifting me and is guiding me and is assisting me in having all of what's in my heart, all of the dreams, all of the sparks of creativity of who each and every one of us are. So when I chose to have a simple life, what was important is that it's not about scarcity. It's not about not having. It's about having. Living simple so that you can have your freedom, have more of the richness of who you are, and have the space to explore, the space to find out, and the space to clear your mind. You know, not be inundated by having to fit yourself in a JOB box or inundated by even trying to fit yourself into an educational box. And where this has spiraled for me, and this is my personal journey, but I think it's becoming more of a shared journey, is as we turn our attention and our hearts back to the mother, and we ground our feet on the earth. What happens is we want to know more about the mother. We want to know more about organic nature. We want to understand, how do I have a conversation with a tree? And then, we're wanting to address all our survival needs. We want to understand, hey, how can I grow food? Where can I get clean drinking water? And the next thing you know, you start to create a life that is first from the mother. And then you may very well start looking at, well, wow, economy can be as simple as, I'm growing corn, the other person's growing tomatoes. Can we just trade? And once you get those basic survival needs, you start to look at your food, your shelter, your water, and fire. Then you stabilize. And it's not about all the things that you don't have. It's about having the gratitude and the celebration of everything that you do have. And then the opportunities are grounded and organic. And then if your creative spark is to get on the computer and create an amazing marketing tool, it will be related to where you're being sourced from. You'll understand, hey, this would be a great software program I can create that's going to serve the world. It's going to help more people understand how to take care of their needs. So I was just sharing how my own spiritual journey and how my freedom is really the utmost importance. And living simply is not about nothing. It's about having everything. And how it has spiraled back to the mother and wanting to know better, what it feels like to be barefoot on the mother's earth and feel the electromagnetic charge. I mean, we're essentially batteries. Who's charging us? The mother and the creative father. We're being charged by electromagnetic particles. We're continually conduits and circuits of energy. And so just the enjoyment of exploring, who is the mother? And she is an organic essence and being, and she feeds us.
Yeah. It reminds me, as you were talking, it reminded me of, I was just cataloging all the stories of children that I know that have done out of the box things. Like my daughter, for one, since the day she was born, has had an affinity for animals, and she finds the humor in them, and she can communicate with them. You know what she's like. And so she volunteered at the Humane Society and cleaned cages and worked with the animals and the dogs, mostly saw births. But she also, my mother and her had this deal where they would go do it. But my mother arranged for her to be able to sit in on an operation.
Oh, nice.
Which was, she wants to be a vet. So those kind of things are out of the box. And then there was a friend of mine who's an architect in Chicago, and she travels a lot to Oslo for conferences and things. And the way she designs homes is with Legos initially. That's how she does her models. And her kid had helped her design their home that they have near me at the cottage. And so he went with her to one of her conferences for some reason, and they started asking him questions about how he designed the house. So she formatted this whole professional development, an hour or two long professional development that he led for these architects. And she said that it was such a creative, out-of-the-box experience for these architects because they were listening to a kid speak. It's like the healer going, buckets. Like the way he approached it was so enlivened and profound and out of the box because he was a pure, clear light.
Yeah.
addressing this information. So now they asked him to come to Oslo and present in Oslo as opposed to informally in Chicago. So they're actually paying, I mean, she's going with him,
Yeah.
but he's running the whole show and they're paying him to do it. And then with the other child who, he just did a TED Talk on homeschooling. Actually, he's a homeschool kid in California, and he just did a TED Talk on how he's become who he is through homeschooling. And I don't know if it's the same kid or a different kid that started a company to bring clean water to people. And then there was another girl the story about the girl who was growing a small garden at home, like with her parents, and they grew this cauliflower that was like, 12 pounds, and she couldn't figure out what to do with it. So she problem solved it with her parents, some options, and she said, I want to take it to a soup kitchen, which I don't think she knew existed before they said, well, these are some options you can do with it. She said, I want to take it to a soup kitchen. So she took it to a soup kitchen, and they made cauliflower soup for the homeless, and she got so inspired that she started a nonprofit for community gardens that then donate everything to feed the homeless. And it started in one little place in her little town, and now it's national.
Right.
And it's called, like, I don't remember, Mary's Garden something. And so she's full-time running her company.
Yeah.
Guess what? She's learning vocabulary, math, problem solving, cultural awareness. So these children are coming out in these ways where you're just like, whoa, hands off, let them fly.
Yes, yes. And as long as we don't interfere with them and keep assisting them. But as you're saying that, I'm thinking about those of us who, once again, okay, we don't come up with an idea like that, all right?
Right.
We don't make it to TED Talk. I want to speak to those people right now, because it's really important. Here it is again. Don't compare yourself, all right? But that wherever you are in your process, that's so important, that everyone's on their path. And if you feel like you're in a funk, or you're stunted, or have writer's block, remember, it's only happening because there's something for you to get clear about. There's something that your higher self wants to bring to the forefront.
Yeah.
So, and if you haven't made it as a glorious artist, or or this or that, it's like, trust the process. And that's the hardest thing, because we've been put into a system that has made us competitive, like that young high school student. We have been enculturated to be competitive, and someone out there has created all the steps you're supposed to achieve until, you're worthy and you're valuable. And that's such bullshit.
And let me
yeah.
I guess I would like to clarify and add on to that. I'm glad you brought up that point, because my intention in saying that wasn't like, oh, these kids are exceptional because they're doing this, but it's that sign of hope that a couple of things. One is that our children are thinking outside the box in ways that we may not have, despite the system, they're waking up. Mm-hmm. And the other aspect is, it goes back to the Mary Oliver poem that Thomas Quebec turned me on to, which was like, it's exceptional just to sense every part of eating that tomato or holding somebody's hand. So there's that balance. And I guess my point was that these parents caught on to what their interest was of that child. Like, my daughter loving animals. And I didn't let pounding her with math get in the way of us going, let's take her to the Humane Society. Let's let her do what she loves to do in that way, and not, she loves dance. Those are kind of truncated stuff, like dance and soccer, but and this child that did the cabbage, or whatever it was, the cauliflower, and started this whole company. That is over average exceptional. But I think that if we take the time to work with our kids to understand what it is just to be with holding a hand or eating that tomato and create that spaciousness, then what you're saying about trusting the timing of things.
That's right. Yeah.
And having enough space to go, you know what, let's start this process of this creative thing. And however it manages itself in the end is as it's meant to be. Because we're training them to create lots of space to sense the divine within.
Exactly, because all we have to do is look at the children that are being brought up by conscious parents or guardians, and we see how brilliant they can be. We have the same potential to be that brilliant. So what I'm saying is, those of us that have been in the system and we've been wounded, be kind to yourself. Just heal your wounds. Don't worry about how you're going to get to that brilliant, innocent child. Just keep loving yourself and trust. And remember, it's a debt enslavement culture that we are seeking to find our magical path within. And it is there for us. But we have not been enculturated to allow Source, the creator, to assist us. And so the threads of divine intervention are here, but we haven't nurtured that to assist us in those moments of, oh, how am I ever going to do this? Don't go there.
Yeah.
Go in here and just trust your process and know that, yes, these children are brilliant and they're being protected, and we need to protect them so that they don't end up having to deal with what we're dealing with, having to refigure it out. So, love them and be happy with them and nurture. And that goes for adults too. When you see somebody's got it, a creative spark, they're lit up, get lit with them, keep one another safe. And just, we're always doing the best that we can. Always doing the best that we can. So right, Tracy says, loving ourselves in the process is so key. So cool. Jerry's fantastic. We just got the best chat room chatters in there.
Little chat room chatters. Mwah.
Mwah.
Well, and I'm glad you said the thing about be kind to yourself too, like be gentle on your children.
Yeah.
And realize that it's exceptional in this day and age just to have a child go, that smell reminds me of, and
Right.
like Lily does that. So, and I have to remember that's actually quite exceptional.
Mm-hmm.
It's exceptionally average. That's, and then I have to be kind to myself because I'm messing her up all the time. My big joke is like, okay, so I'm saving money for her to go to college or long-term therapy. She gets to pick when she gets 18, So, and I have to be kind to myself in that too, and just constantly remind myself that average is exceptional and moving slowly is exactly where we need to be. And notice my push. And when I push her. Yeah. And, it's funny because I was talking with a very long time friend yesterday that I hadn't spoken to in 3 years for no other reason than we lost each other's numbers and we've been busy. And I was talking about, catching her up on my business stuff. And she's like, that is so, you should be so proud of yourself. That's amazing. And I was like, yeah, but I can't seem to do this last push, like to really launch it. And I think something's going on with me. And she's like, well, what do you think it is? And she's not that much of a spiritual person. She's never had a spiritual practice. I mean, I love her. She's got, we have other things that nurture us, but she's not she doesn't do yogi stuff. But she said, what's that last thing that will push you over that edge to get, really launch the stuff? And I said, I really need to get back into my meditation practice. And really what that means is sitting on a quantum cellular level is what I would have said to us and our viewers. But it's creating more stillness, more spaciousness, because I've been so busy and I've been pushing so much professionally in these other arenas, and just life, back in school is busy for Lily. And my answer was just like, sit in more stillness and it will come. I know it will come if I can create some spaciousness and stillness. It will just.
Yeah.
So.
And I think about our listeners, and I know myself when I watch broadcasts, you always wonder, it's like, well, how do they love themselves? How do they stay centered? And I will say this over and over. When I sit in stillness, and the longer I can sit, when you can really hear the inner noise quiet down, okay?
Mhm.
Even if the mind is still chattering, it'll be like this loud, boisterous chatter, and then it starts to get almost whispery, all right?
Yeah.
That in one of our broadcasts that we did, I think it was before we went live with CCN, we talk about getting clean and getting clear. And there is something magical. If you can just sit still, and you don't even have to have a meditation practice, it's called relaxation.
Mhm.
And the longer you can sit and not follow that impulse to check your phone or to get up and do this and do that, right? Or turn your head. What was that? What was it? Really relax and just be in this moment. The magic is here. It's a subtle, invisible energy. It's the source. And she just cleans you up. And it gets the quiet. You don't have to think, oh, I've got to resolve this issue. It could be as simple as, I got to pay this bill. I don't have the money. I don't know where it's from. You let go of the thinking and you just sit and allow the source to flow through. She's helping us. And a creative solution will always emerge, not at your timing, at what's called divine timing, but trusting and just stay the fuck chilled out and don't be afraid. And that's it. And I'm telling you, it's that simple. Sit and you will be cleaned up by the mother. She just will do that. And again, it's like, it's the stillness and stay focused on your heart. Just stay focused energetically, mathematically, quantum physically, scientifically, spiritually. The heart is all this electromagnetic, kinetic energy that's plugged in like Tesla, all right? Tesla knew the energy's right here. The energy's right here. Just let the conductors be open and let yourself be recharged because we are like batteries. All right? Yeah. So in the physicality of it, we are electromagnetically being refreshed. It's like when the modem goes down, you reset it, right? It needs a pause. It needs to clear the status. And then you just feel the peace and hold your heart. Just stay focused on your heart. Like they said, the heart has more electromagnetic charges happening in this area than your brain, believe it or not. Your brain is not the main movement. Yeah, just go with the dance. Let yourself go into the sacred geometry.
He's like, what is going on?
Right. Biggie's going, whoa, my head, man. Biggie's our engineer, co-producer behind this whole presentation. But it's important, no matter what we talk about, and whatever's going on in the world, right? Stay in balance, love yourself, recharge. And just know, think of Tesla. Just recharge. Yum. It's right there.
Yum.
Right there. We have another. Oh, Kathleen came on. She's another one of our viewers.
Mm-hmm. Hi, Kathleen.
Hi, Kathleen. Let's see what she's saying. I spend most of my time in nature, just watching nature be nature. It saves me every single day. And then Tracy responded, me too, Kathleen. And then Kathleen says, if I didn't get out in nature every day, Tracy, I would combust.
Combust.
That's beautiful. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Going out into the mother. She's our organic juice.
Mm-hmm. Juice.
That's what keep you juiced.
Excuse me.
Oh, bless you. Bless you.
As my grandmother would say, I'm sneezing on the truth.
Oh, that's a good one. I hadn't heard that one.
Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah, I feel like, as a society or a first worlders, we put ourselves here and nature here, and nature's become this recreational thing. And, I know all of us, most of us watching are old enough to have been around where the trend of like cross trainers led to the trend of like water bottles everywhere and then high-tech backpacks for hiking, and everybody got into this like nature thing. And I remember I was living in Los Angeles at the time with people my age. I was in my early 20s and then mid 20s and then mid 30s, but I saw this trend start to happen. And people would put on the gear. Back in the day we would hike in cutoff shorts and flip-flops, no backpack, 6-pack of beer.
Right.
And now everybody's like hiking with like high-tech water bottles and mule backs and backpacks and high-tech shoes. I'm like, dude, you're only going for 2 hours. Like and so, and then our cars all became this thing that all these SUVs look like little mini hiking boots, and so we drive around and wait for Armageddon to hit so we can pull out of like, the fallen building.
Now what we're saying is just fucking get naked, be barefoot for sure, and just go take a walk
Or,
out.
you know what? Build a house with like trees and grass. Like my cottage for me is, I live in a small city where it's really nature oriented too, but when I'm at the cottage, I don't feel like I have to go be in nature because it's all right there. Like the windows are open. We know we don't have any central air or heat. And so I feel like I'm living inside outside. So I don't feel like, oh God, I haven't been outside all day. I have to go for a walk, or I'm in an office building where, I have to go outside during my lunch hour, or, so that's why I encourage people to re-landscape or live in situations where they're living in nature. And that can happen in more city type places too if we rethink things. But for me personally, I don't know if I could go back to living in places like Los Angeles or Chicago where I had to go find nature to do it. Living in places like Eureka Springs is pretty nature centered anyway, although I found myself being inside a lot because I was working so much and had to go do that. But living in a 100-year-old home, and my cottage is 50 years old also, and living around a lot of greenery, I'm not having that dialogue with myself anymore about like, oh, I have to go drive in my car and go for a hike. I don't think I could live like that anymore.
Yeah. But, I want to acknowledge those who are still in LA. I trust the spiritual process, okay?
Totally.
And as much as we're saying get out to nature, there's beautiful places you can go to from LA and all the big cities.
Yeah.
But it's really important.
It's even more important because they're living in the concrete jungle that they still have that dialogue with themselves.
That's right. And so no matter where we are in the world, it's really, as long as you're loving yourself, you're just fine. And whatever conjures up the mother or nature for you, that's all that matters. I remember seeing a YouTube years ago. It was a 5-year-old boy. And his only message to all the world was, think about the earth.
Mm-hmm.
And, it can just be that simple, because I like to, where those of us have made changes in our lives and live in nature, it's like, there's no better or worse. I lived in the big cities and I wouldn't be where I am right now, whether I'm in nature or not, if I hadn't lived in those big cities too.
Oh, totally.
Right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. So let me see. These girls are just going to town here, and Jerry's in there laughing out loud. And, oh, this was cute. Tracy says, I be juiced. And then, yep, Rebecca, it is funny. It is like they play at being nature.
Yeah.
If you go outside and lay on the lawn, it's the same thing as hiking in the forest. Yeah,
right.
That's so true.
It's so funny too, because I watched all my friends who grew up in bigger cities in Chicago or the suburbs or Orange County, LA, and then this trend started happening, and I never considered I'm not like an outdoorsman. Like I was never a big skier. I cross country skied in Chicago at the zoo when I was a kid, and we went camping all the time with my dad, but it was never something where it's like, okay, we're that person. It's just something we love to do. And then we became those people when we got the gear. And I was just looking at my friends going, this is really weird. Like we're we're taking pictures and we're hiking with all the gear, and yeah, and I saw it just get worse and worse and worse, and now people like walk around in high-tech shoes and yoga pants all day long, and I'm like, well, did you just do 7 hours of yoga, or are you just having coffee? And it's become this thing, and it's buying into this idea that we have to be a thing, and not just, I'm just going to go be out in nature. And
okay, there goes. Okay, that brings in the understanding of the network's name. Conscious consumer.
Yeah.
All right. So we have been led to be propagandized consumers, and you can't enjoy nature unless you have this $250 backpack.
Yeah.
Wearing those, those $150 or $200 boots, right?
Yeah.
So conscious consumer is not just the commodities and items that we buy, but conscious consumer, which is this network, is about consciously choosing what you're allowing to go into your brain and into your heart and into your being. Be a conscious consumer. Don't watch bullshit news that's not true, or watch shows that are putting horrible images into your being. Be a conscious consumer. Even when you drink your beer, consciously consume your beer. Enjoy it. Be grateful. Yeah, I just thought that was just too perfect to lead into conscious consumer. Conscious Consumer Network.tv. That's how you are getting to experience this broadcast today. And I think I'll just take a moment now to remind our listeners, Conscious Consumer Network.tv. There are many, many other programs that I absolutely encourage you to browse through. And we have a couple of programs that have youth. I believe we have one host that's maybe 15 years of age. And we have very hardcore delivery of alternative media news, shoulder to shoulder with the whistleblowers. We have shows that are talking about homeopathic medicines, alternative health care. It just goes on and on. So please take time to browse the other programs. And CCN runs 24/7. If it's not a live broadcast that's happening, it's a pre-recorded documentary or a really, really awesome commercial or, message. And we also have a reminder that any of these shows, if you'd like to have the archive in high definition, you go to femarket.com and you can download them for €5, which is it's a little more than $5 US money. And just off the top of my head, I would recommend, for those of you that really like to dig into the consciousness of the world, I would recommend the Round Table on Monday nights. And also there's a broadcast guide that's posted every week. And if you really like hardcore news delivery, I would recommend Transpicuous News. That's on Sundays, 3 o'clock Central. Unfortunately, I haven't visited a lot of the programs. I know I think I told you, Tracy, our chat room, that I was going to be on the internet more, but it's not quite sorted out yet. My transportation to the Get Lit studio is not quite sorted out, so I'm not on as much, which is why you're not seeing a lot of my suggested. Go ahead, Jackie.
Yeah, so I wanted to remind everybody that the young girl that Blue spoke of is Natalie Marie Hart, and she is amazing. So to watch that show, it's a new show. It started, I think, 2 weeks ago.
And what is Crystal? What was the name of that show?
Oh, Crystal. What is it, Biggie? Crystal.
Yeah. Okay, it's
Crystal Kids TV.
Okay,
yeah,
Crystal
that's what it is.
Kids TV. Good.
Crystal Kids TV. I also wanted to tell everybody that next week, Saturday the 2nd, we're not broadcasting. We will be doing a pre-recorded show on Friday at...
It'll be the same time, I think, right, baby?
Friday at 3 o'clock U.S. Eastern or 2 o'clock U.S. Standard. From CCN to
wait, hold up. It's going to be the same time as what I understood. It'll be 3 o'clock, our regular show time. Only next week it's going to be on Friday.
Right.
And it's going to be a pre-recorded show.
That's what I just said.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you said 2 o'clock.
Well, I said 3 o'clock Eastern, 3 o'clock. Let me fix it. It's 3 o'clock Standard Time, 4 o'clock Eastern Time. This is in the U.S., so you'll have to convert that for yourself.
Okay.
But when she says 3 o'clock, she means Standard Time in the U.S. So it'll be the same time. So next week we will be on Friday, not Saturday. Ladies and gentlemen, anybody that has any last words to say? We are about 10 minutes out.
Let's see. Oh, okay. Yes. Tracy reminded also Collective Imagination, another amazing show. It's on Tuesdays. Okay. So you got those names. You can look at the broadcast guide. It's the Collective Imagination. It's the Round Table, Conspicuous News, Crystal Kids TV. Oh, we could go on and on. Then there's Dragonology. Oh my gosh. You just got to cruise the network.
And of course I have my favorites, but now we're out of time. So, but really everything, I would watch snippets of everything.
Yeah.
And then find the ones that resonate with you. And then that's going to change. There might be a topic that someone's really talking about, but they're all just incredible. We are so honored to be on a platform with such amazingly brilliant, exceptionally average people. We're also exceptionally average.
And also just so grateful. I'm writing it in the chat room. So grateful to have our our chatters with us, and we encourage more listeners and viewers to do this with us. It's fun to enter the conversation and hear what you have to say. They love all of us as well. And again, I'm doing Get Lit from the Art Colony. We're in Eureka Springs, Arkansas, and you are always welcome to come here and visit the different artists in their studios. And also today I had put a call out to Eurekians and local peoples that will probably have a conversation after this show. We sit out at the tables in the courtyard, and just brilliant people here, brilliant, loving people. So I think,
Blue is one of my best friends, and I love her dearly. But I have this thing about long goodbyes.
Okay.
And she is just the longest goodbyer.
I know.
I'm like, I love you. Go ahead. Mwah, I'm done. And she loves the long goodbye. It's such a lesson for me in creating spaciousness. Goodbye. And okay. All right. And goodbye. Okay. And all right. Okay. Goodbye. It was like 2 shows ago. You guys were putting me through hell because I was like, where'd everybody go?
Yeah. We're getting lots of thanks and love from the chat room. Thanks, dear ladies. Wish I had caught you sooner. That was Kathleen today. And I often ask myself why all the people I love the most live so far away.
I know. Well, at least we have this. And then Biggie wrote, if he's okay with me sharing, and Blue is our resident Lord of the Rings, Fellowship of the Rings ending. Yeah, this is like the trilogy that never ends. She's our Lord of the Rings. And we're done. It's done. Oh, no, wait, there's a whole nother 4 hours. Oh, wait, no, that's done. Oh, no, wait, there's a whole nother 7 hours.
One of these times, Biggie, I'll have to do a marathon. See how long I can
go.
I'll just do a solo marathon. Get my yayas out.
I bet it would go at least 27 and a half hours.
Yeah, I think I'd probably last as long as I could stay awake.
Yeah. Biggie writes, what the hell are yayas? We better get off the air soon. Yayas, like I get my thrills out.
Okay. Yeah, you get all your thrills out. That's good. All right. I love everyone. Mwah.
That's all you get. You're done. I love everyone too. We will see you next week. Blessings to all. Biggie, Mel, we love you. And you'll see a pre-recorded on Friday, and then we'll be back the next Saturday.